The Crow, City of Angels, defies all expectations. That statement was not said in a positive light, no. This game defied all expectations I had for just how abysmally horrid a video game could get. Based on the movie with the same name, which it's bad enough that it's a movie-based game, but additionally it's based on the atrocious sequel, already sounding off warning bells. The opening sees the main character, Ash, getting executed along with his son, putting this as the shortest game I've ever played. Unfortunately, the mysterious Crow resurrects Ash to seek vengeance on the gang that just executed him, and by doing that, angers the player by allowing this game to start its gameplay. The Crow must have done a poor job at bringing back Ash, because he looks like the aftermath of a goth bukkake scene. The opening cutscene is so rushed and poorly voice acted that I had no idea what was going on, even on multiple replays. I'll play the full opening to show just how confusing it is. Shown at the start of each level is each gang member's involvement in the starting cutscene to indicate that they will be the boss of the level. I think they reused the same clips simply due to the fact that they spent all their budget on the opening cutscene, or maybe they spent all their money licensing this game and only had $4 left to actually make it. It shows that this game had no funding when each area looks like the bowels of a public toilet, occasionally punctured by red and yellow tinges, which is the game's only lighting. Every level feels like the last one because all the scenery is indistinguishable from one another, and the further you play, the more boring the areas get because it feels like you've played the first level's initial area about 70 times before the end of the game. Have you ever listened to a preview of a song and thought to yourself that it would sound amazing as an infinite loop? Oh, you haven't? Well, too bad. That's the game's soundtrack, with each song sounding like someone beating their head against the wall with a guitar riff in the background. Each enemy type only has two voice lines, one of which is their grunts and moans after being hit. The other is usually a threat or insult, which is never threatening or insulting, and sounds lamer the multi-thousand times they say it. It's as if the antagonists in this game were told the more you say a joke, the funnier it gets, and decided to apply that thinking to their lackluster insults. It's even worse in boss fights because they tend to spout their insults about 30 times more frequently, and since they have a lot more health than the average enemy, or simply put, you're going to hear their catchphrase a lot. I don't know about you, but I feel very privileged as a gamer to get the honour of hearing a new 10-second loop of a song and new insult each time I reach another level. The game uses tank controls, which must be expected at this point if you want to make games needing precise accuracy. These controls really fuck me off because half the time you aren't properly facing the enemy and all your punches and kicks are missing them by mere inches. Unfortunately, a lot of the time the enemy faces the same problem, and a lot of fights consist of everyone flailing their arms around without any harm being done. I think this game forgets it's a 3D beat 'em up and not a 2D fighter because there's two health bars at the top of the screen, one for you and an enemy. The problem with that is the health of the first enemy in a room has their health displayed, and only until they're defeated does one other lucky enemy get their health displayed. Most of the time I thought that I was versing a tough enemy, when in reality I wasn't even hitting the enemy with their health being displayed. The fact that enemies barely show that they're being hurt by any of your attacks, combined with the aforementioned problems with never hitting your foe, leaves most fights to be monotonous button mashes, as well as the fact that the game barely features any combos. When in combat, everyone enters a stance and walks around like they're limping, which aggravates me because in this stance you walk even slower than usual, most of the time being easy to fight in the one spot. Occasionally, Ash will forget how to function properly as a human and get stuck in place for a few seconds, which forces the fight to happen in the one spot anyway. If you take too long to get to the next section of the level, the Crow will caw at you to get a move on, even in boss fights. Look, I know you revive me and all, but you don't have to be an asshole about it, Crow, especially since I need to navigate these confusing levels. Most sections require that you defeat all the enemies in the area before moving on, even in one room areas where enemies seem to spawn in from nowhere to fight you. To indicate that you can move on, a crow symbol is on the floor, but I'm guessing the developers knew how shit the camera angles were, so they plastered the symbol everywhere. I wish the game would just load me into the next section, because most sections are broken up with loading screens anyway, and that'd just save me looking for the way onwards. The game gets damn near impossible to complete when guns are introduced, because only a few shots take you down, and with the tank controls, when you get your hands on a gun, you shoot every bullet just to the left and right of the enemy, because that's just the theme of these controls, just missing the mark. In fact, the game got so hard that, yeah, I turned on the invincibility cheat to complete it. When you're getting shot by the guns, you're slowed down even more, and since the enemies reload faster than you can run to them, to put this as aggravating is not doing the feeling justice. Although, most of the time the enemy walks towards you when shooting, leading them to be in range of your punches. If you can face them at the right angle, that is. I think even the enemies are tired of hearing the one-liners spouted by their comrades, because gun-wielding enemies more often than not will shoot and kill any enemies that you fight. In fact, they're so tired of the repetitive dialogue that at times will just leave a fight and proceed back to patrolling the area. Or maybe the AI is dog shit. My bets are on the latter. The enemies in the game have a strange obsession with rocket launchers, because in later levels every other gun is a rocket launcher, and simple objects such as staffs and even guitars can contain a rocket launcher. In fact, every gun must contain a hidden rocket somewhere, because whenever a gun is dropped, they explode. Or maybe the game was developed by people who had no clue how guns worked. My bets are on the latter. In fact, the enemies are so keen on using the rocket launchers, they don't care if they're in close proximity of their target. Or maybe the AI is... or maybe I should stop using this sort of joke. The worst part of this game is its camera angles. They never seem to be in the right angle to view Ash, either being the extreme of too close where you can see every pixel of Ash, or the extreme of too far away where characters could be mistaken for the weapons on the floor. It doesn't help that every room has 6 different angles when only one is needed. Like guys, this is in your art school project, stop changing camera positions every few steps I make. The camera is particularly atrocious in combat, where you can fight enemies off screen, behind the environment, or even get pushed back into another camera position by an enemy, completely disorientating you. The ending is particularly strange, with the main antagonist Judah capturing the girl that we really have no connection to, because her only real existence is to be captured, and this lures us to him. The real kicker is when Judah kills the crow, which is never explained why the crow is dumb enough to be captured, and killing the crow somehow takes Ash's powers. You then go to hell, fight a few zombies, return to the real world, both as mortals, where you fight and finally return to your son. This ending is as confusing as navigation throughout the levels, and the developers were too lazy to have the credits roll at the end and instead have it as a main menu option. In conclusion, I find it ironic that this game was published by a company called Acclaim, when this game will never get acclaim from anyone. It has everything I hate in a game, rolled up into a middle finger towards anyone playing it. With atrocious controls, a camera that never wants to look at you, dull combat, and annoying and repetitive sounds, I'd be kidding myself if I didn't include this as the worst game I've played so far. This abhorrent mess makes the other games I've played on this series look semi-competent. Don't worry, I'm not angry enough to assign any positive words to those games. Here are the ranking of the games so far, and please help me if the next game I look at is as bad as these last few games, because being hung, drawn and quartered looks like a more appealing life choice than playing another one of these games.